Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating text that essentially treats our democratic system like, well, a giant science experiment in desperate need of some serious R&D. If you're a civics student, a history buff, or honestly, just someone who cares deeply about constitutional rights and what true freedom actually means, consider this your masterclass. We're going to look at a totally radical proposal that asks us to completely rethink how we govern ourselves. Let's get right into it. Here is our roadmap for today's lesson. We'll hit 5 key points. 1. The promise of liberty. 2. The political reality gap. 3. A partyless pilot project. 4. Scaling to the world. And finally, number 5, the call for good people. Starting off with Section 1, the promise of liberty, and looking at the absolute blueprint of our Constitution. Okay, let's look at the preamble. This foundational text, adopted way back in 1949, lays out our ultimate goals. It's the literal guiding principle for all our laws. It guarantees things like justice, equality, fraternity, and, absolutely crucial for this explainer, liberty. But, what does liberty actually look like in a practical day-to-day sense? This is where the author really shakes up our standard understanding of liberty. They argue that true political liberty isn't just, the physical act of dropping a ballot in a box. It's the genuine, totally unhindered freedom to select leaders who are actually educated, experienced, and honest. It's the right to choose a genuinely good representative, not just the loudest one. Which brings us to Section 2, the political reality gap, or what happens when that beautiful blueprint meets reality. Now, there is a massive, undeniable gap here. Ideally, the preamble tells us it's our sacred duty to pick the best, most capable citizens to lead us, right? But the reality? Well, the author points out we're often forced to choose from a highly restricted slate of candidates. Basically, we only get to pick from the people who actively push themselves forward. And let's be real, those folks are often just the most powerful, wealthy, or highly ambitious individuals in a given area. Sometimes, they're even corrupt. The truly good, honest people, they often stay miles away from politics because of all the ethical compromises involved. So what we call a choice is actually kinda an illusion. Now, you might immediately think, wait, what about NOTA? That's the none of the above option introduced a while back so voters can reject everyone on the ballot if they feel nobody is up to scratch. But the author asks an incredibly poignant question here. Is standing in a queue for hours in the hot sun just to officially choose nobody a real expression of political freedom? The author says absolutely not. It's a wasted effort. Hitting NOTA doesn't magically give you a good leader. It just registers your frustration. The text actually compares our current electoral system to sowing a defective seed. Think about it. You can't plant a bad seed and expect a healthy harvest, right? NOTA doesn't fix the seed. It just complains about the crop. Moving on to Section 3, a partyless pilot project. Let's talk about planting a better seed. So, if the current system is broken, the author proposes a brand new R&D pilot project to fix it. Think of this like a civics experiment right at the grassroots level, the local ward. In this proposed system, get this, nobody officially stands for election, literally 0 candidates. There are no political campaigns, no blasting loudspeakers, no party systems, and absolutely no pre-packaged agendas. Instead, using a completely secret ballot, every single citizen just writes down the name of the most capable, honest, and mature person they personally know in their neighborhood. Actually, scratch the whole election comparison. It's more like a completely silent nomination process where you just put forward the person you genuinely trust the most. Let's weigh the pros and cons the author maps out for this partyless system. The benefits are honestly massive. You completely wipe out money, power, violence, and all that disunity caused by toxic propaganda and false promises. I mean, without campaigns, there's literally nothing to fight over. But the author is realistic about the downsides too. The absolute biggest con? It has never been tried before. There's a natural human fear of the unknown, for sure. We definitely see initial teething problems, and you can expect massive opposition from vested interests, specifically current political parties, who would stand to lose all their power. But let's say we overcome that fear. Here is how governance would actually function. The top 9 or 10 people who get the most write-in votes simply form the local panchayat, or council. They serve a really short, one-year tenure, which is immediately followed by an annual public review. They even undergo specific training in politeness and non-egoistic public service. And here is the real kicker. No single member holds any individual power. The author actually brings in this famous quote from William Shakespeare to explain exactly why this new system strips individual authority away. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. In this setup, even the sarpanch, the head of the village, is basically just a facilitator for meetings. All decisions have to be made by the council as a collective whole. By removing that individual power, you drastically cut down the temptation and the opportunity for corruption. All right, Section 4, Scaling to the World, taking this from the village to global governance. Now, we have our tiny local ward experiment, but how does this change a whole nation? This is where the theory gets incredibly ambitious. It basically works like a ladder. Down at the very bottom, citizens elect the ward members because, hey, you actually know the people in your neighborhood. But you probably don't know everyone in your entire district, right? So the general public doesn't vote in district elections. Instead, those newly elected ward members vote to choose the district representatives. Then, those district reps elect the state government. And finally, the state reps select the national leaders. It's a totally bottom-up chain of trust, 100% free of political parties. And the author doesn't even stop at the national border. They actually dream of a day when this scales up to an all-powerful, partyless international government. Think about how interdependent our modern world is today. If national representatives who were chosen through this strict merit-based ladder selected a global council, the author suggests we could save unimaginable amounts of time, talent, and money. And most importantly, we could potentially prevent wars altogether. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the call for good people, and your role in this whole experiment. Because let's face it, a theory is just a theory unless there is actual action behind it. So how do we kickstart this massive shift? The author outlines some very concrete, real-world steps. First, we literally need to run the pilot project in a small village, just to prove it actually works. Second, responsible NGOs and everyday citizens need to step up and file public interest litigations, PILs, in the Supreme Court, basically arguing that our current system violates the true constitutional spirit of liberty. And third, this is exactly where you all come in. Students and the youth must actively start discussing these ideas in colleges and schools to build that vital public momentum. This brilliantly brings us right back to the core thesis of this whole explainer. When Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the chief architect of the Indian Constitution, was asked if our Constitution would guarantee good governance, he gave a really stark warning. He said that even the absolute best constitution in the world is completely useless without good people to implement it in the right spirit. The author's entire proposal here isn't just a fun thought experiment. It's a systemic mechanism designed specifically to find and empower those naturally good people, rather than just relying on toxic party politics. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought from the text. Change your thinking, change the world. You've just walked through a pretty radical reimagining of democracy. So as civics students and the future leaders of tomorrow, how are you going to use this lesson? Are you going to just accept the current system exactly as it is? Or will you be the one to discuss, debate, and actually help shape a totally new future for our political freedom? Keep questioning everything, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.